All right, y'all, welcome to Hollywood Hangouts. I'm Nerdy Dustin. Noah is not with us this week because he is got prior engagements. I'm joined by Harry Marks from Let's Go to the Lobby, right? On
Let's all
TikTok.
go to the lobby.
I'll go to the lobby. I love this dude. He's one of my favorite content creators on the TikTok app. And in general, he's really big into older films. Like when you think Turner Classic Films, right? Movies, you think older movies. Movies from like the 1920s to like, I don't know, the 1970s and on. I love it. Y'all know me. You know I love old movies, and I think Harry loves them more than I do, maybe. Maybe.
I think I love them more than a lot of folks. No, there are a lot of us. Not as many on TikTok as I would hope, but on Instagram I found there's a big classic film community, and on Facebook too.
That is so awesome. I love that. I love it. So, Harry, what did you start like your love of movies? Was it always older movies, or did you just into movies and then eventually you found the older stuff and
It was mostly like I was into movies. You and I have a lot of I think similar tastes in terms of like movies from the 80s and 90s, and Back to the Future and Ghostbusters, and all the stuff that we grew up watching as kids, Goonies, that kind of stuff. My parents really got me into classic film from a young age because we Turner Classic Movies was always on in the house. It was either my mother was watching a Judy Garland musical, or my dad was watching a Marx Brothers movie. I got a lot of my humor from my dad, and a lot of that came from the Marx Brothers. And so that's where I developed my love of classic film, and that just sort of carried through. And then when I started learning the history of these films and how they were made, and what was going on in Hollywood at the time, it just sort of helped develop my love of classic film even more.
I love that. Love that. So, y'all, and I gotta tell you something. Harry it might be the first person I've ever met that knows this, that Hollywood did not start in Hollywood. It actually started on the East Coast. And we talked about that at one time, and you're the first person that I've known to actually know that.
Yep. Fort Lee, New Jersey was the original quote Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood was developed as a real estate development out in California, but the movie industry started in New Jersey, in West Orange with Thomas Edison and everything. But what happened was, Thomas Edison and companies like Kodak, and there was a whole cartel of companies that were sort of developing film equipment and film materials like film itself. And they formed this little cartel. And so what happened was a lot of people stayed in Jersey or close to it in order to make their movies close to Edison and his whole cabal. So Fort Lee provided a great way for up and coming directors and producers to get talent from across the river in New York and bring them over to Jersey to do movies. Broadway actors, theater actors, vaudeville actors. And they could come, right over the river, do a movie, and then go back over the river to, do a play, or, do a vaudeville show. What ended up happening was the reason everyone moved out to California, it was a couple of things. It was like 24/7, 365 perfect weather, which really helped with filming outdoors. And then also at the time, Edison's cabal, his cartel of little companies, were very, very strict about licensing their technology and licensing just the ability to make movies. Every movie that was made at that time, turn of the century, had to be run by him and his people. And if they didn't like the movie you were making, if they didn't think it was appropriate or whatever it was, or basically if you didn't pay him, he would sue you into the ground and you wouldn't be able to make your movie. You might lose your studio. So they moved out west because it was extremely difficult and not worth it to enforce copyrights and trademarks 3,000 miles away. So California basically became the de facto home for the movie industry after New Jersey.
100% yes, and I love that you know that, and more people should know that. But now it's kind of funny, right? Because now the movie industry has kind of come back home in a sense, because there's way more stuff being made in like Atlanta, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina,
Yep.
Wilmington, North Carolina, and now. a lot of productions have moved overseas. That's
Overseas, Canada gets a lot of productions. Jersey is now becoming once again a hotbed of Hollywood activity. There, I think Netflix is building a whole bunch of studios in Jersey. And I know that they film. There's a lot of stuff that gets filmed over here. Severance, one of my favorite shows of the last 5 years, on Apple TV Plus, films in Holmdel, New Jersey, at the old Bell Labs building. I was there a couple months ago to go check it out. So yeah, it's awesome to see Hollywood coming back to its roots.
I love that. I love that. As someone who works in the industry and lives on the East Coast, I really love that because I don't like to travel.
There you go. It's so much easier. It's great that, all these different places. I mean, they offer a bunch of tax incentives to do it, but like it was funny. Like I work now near the World Trade Center in New York, and as I'm walking down, I'm seeing, if you've ever been in New York and you've, been near a movie set, they put up these big colored laminated placards on the light poles telling you what's filming that day. And there's a website I used to go to. I don't think it's around anymore. They changed it. It was called On Location Vacations, and it would tell you what was filming in New York all around the city. And so they sometimes there's a code name on it to hide what's really being filmed. But like Law and Order was filming 2 blocks from my office the other day, and I remember years and years ago they filmed A Person of Interest in my office building, which is really annoying because I was trying to get to work and there's like people blocking everything. I walked through a filming of White Collar with Matt Bomer. Like they filmed right outside the Scholastic building in Manhattan. It's just wild to see like all this stuff going on at any given time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I live in Charleston, and we're filming a lot of stuff here now, and it's the same thing. You just, actually, it was just, it's like a year ago, which is wild because reality TV show, hint, hint, reality TV shows aren't real, but I won't name the show, but there's a certain reality show that's filmed here where they block off traffic so the two actors can cross the street, and it's like,
Is it Real Housewives?
no, no.
Oh, okay.
It is a Bravo show. That's all I'll say. But it's like, why are you blocking off traffic for a reality TV show?
It's it's always so funny when they like clear out a restaurant so two people can have a conversation. It's
Yeah, it's
absurd.
it's yeah. I get it. As a movie producer, I know how annoying it is for people. I've had to do it myself. I've had to block places off and take over buildings. I get it. It's annoying and it is, but you know, it is what it is.
Well, I felt kind of bad and I didn't when they were filming Person of Interest because I sort of got in the way of someone and he was like, I'm trying to work here. And I'm like, yeah, me too. And I actually work upstairs, so leave me alone.
Oh, personage. That's wow. That's a show I haven't thought about in a while. Um, so Harry, what? Okay, so you're big on TikTok. What drew you to TikTok?
I'm big on TikTok is not something I would ever say about myself.
I
I,
think so.
I appreciate that. My following pales in comparison to some people, but TikTok was a weird thing for me because I had started my account. I didn't know what to do with it. I was lurking a lot. Like I'd scroll and watch other people's videos, and I'd wanted to do something to sort of put myself out there, and have an outlet, a creative outlet. So I started doing like just videos around my backyard and um, just random stuff that had no real direction. And as I was scrolling one day, I noticed that Turner Classic Movies has an account and they were posting clips from different classic films. They do a lot of like, they'll post a clip from a classic film and a funny caption, and they'll do some, cute imagery or closed captioning that's stylized and stuff. And it's really nice and funny and fun. But they weren't posting the stuff that I really love about TCM, which is the introductions. Anyone who's watched a movie on TCM or before a movie, there's always a host who comes on and tells you about the film you're about to watch. So you learn about the making of it or the history behind it or what was going on in the world. And it's my favorite part of the movie because I love learning about the story behind the movies. So when I saw that they weren't doing that, I was like, well, I'm a writer. My job is to research. At the time, it was a writer. My job is to research things and present them in a an informative but accessible way. So I'm going to do it. I will be the channel that you go to when you want to watch a classic film. You watch my introduction and then you go watch the movie. And so that's what I started doing.
I love it. I love that so much, y'all. If you If you have TikTok, definitely, and I'm gonna link his TikTok in the description because it's so much fun. I remember I've told him numerous times, and I even tag Turner every time I can. And Turner, if you're watching, if they're watching, Harry needs to be doing all your stuff.
I agree. It's so funny. I can't get arrested by them. I don't know what it is, but there's just like I did a whole month dedicated to Turner Classic Movies, to their history for April because they were turning 30 years old. I even did an introduction to the channel in the style of a TCM introduction. Couldn't get any comments, any shares, nothing. It was just like, what's going on here? But it's you know what? It's fine. It has worked out because even though TCM doesn't care about me, there is a fantastic streaming app called Momitu, which is they have a ton of horror and classic films and dramas and comedies, and it's all hand curated. They don't use an AI algorithm to show stuff to you. So when you go in, everyone sort of gets to see the same thing, but you get stuff that has been handpicked for consuming and watching. And so they brought me on, and 4 times a month, once every week, I do an introduction to a classic film on their network, on their streaming app. So I'm sort of doing what I've always wanted to do. I'm just doing it for Momito instead of TCM, and it's great. They're fantastic, run by the most wonderful people. And the guy they have, his name's Charles. He does the editing for the intros, and finds the best imagery, and he makes me look so good. So I and it's totally free. That's the big selling point. There's some ads, during the film, very few, but it's totally free, and they've got a ton of classic films. If you want, like Night of the Living Dead, House on Haunted Hill, Diabolique, Nosferatu, they're all up there.
I have subscribed myself here recently. It is a great app. I'm also gonna tag it down below. It is, yeah, it's fantastic. It's in the vein, like Tubi, right? You do have to watch ads, but at the end of the day, it's okay because they
Yeah.
have stuff you might not be able to find somewhere else. Especially when it comes to older movies. That's another thing. Older movies, uh, they're just getting harder and harder to find nowadays.
Hmm.
And It's a shame because a lot of those movies are so good. I can watch Casablanca all day long, all day long.
Same.
Um, it's Yeah, I love old movies. So, Harry, what is, in your opinion, what's the best decade for film?
The 1930s. 1939 was
Ooh,
the best year for film. Um, 1939 gives you um Gone with the Wind. It gives you The Wizard of Oz. I actually had the page up the other day. I was looking at it because there was a video someone was doing of like the best year of film, and it was like the 2026 is going to be the best year of film ever, and it was like the hell it is. You've got Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, um, Babes in Arms, The Women, Drums Along the Mohawk, but like Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz in the same year, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is just an absolute powerhouse of a year. Stagecoach, starring John Wayne, was in 1939. Um, what else do we got here? Goodbye, Mr. Chips, Ninotchka, Of Mice and Men, Wuthering Heights. Just absolute powerhouse year.
yeah, the 1930s. That is definitely that's really the year I think Hollywood found itself. To be honest with you,
It it did, and it did, and then it sort of lost itself because you got
yeah.
the early 30s pre-code, which is, it's really doing what it wants to do. You've got like 42nd Street, and you've got the original Maltese Falcon, you've got the original Scarface, and then 1936, you've got the Hays Code goes into effect, and suddenly everything changes. Movies have to be different. They have to adhere to a bunch of strict rules about how violence is presented, how sex is presented or not presented. Interracial marriage couldn't be depicted on film. So like things got a lot more closed-minded. But at the same time, it allowed films to be more inclusive and less offensive. Like Gone with the Wind, if it had been pre-code and adhered strictly to the book that Margaret Mitchell wrote, it would have been almost unwatchable by today's standards, because of the language used in the book that they could not use in film because of the Hays Code. So certain words that I won't say here could not be used in film, because of the Hays Code, like insulting language of certain of any ethnic groups or races or anything like that. So in many ways, it was very draconian and um, you know very stifling to filmmakers. And on the other side of that, it made films more palatable, I think.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And then, yeah, I feel like, yeah, Hollywood definitely, and it does that, right? It finds stride and then it loses itself and then it brings itself back.
Well,
And
yeah, I mean, over the next, 20 years, because the Hays Code sort of dies out by 1968. And I would say, coming around, the 1950s, after World War II, and then the Korean War, and then, you're going into Vietnam, suddenly it was like, it doesn't matter anymore because what they're showing on television is worse than what they're getting in films. You're seeing war depicted on TV and in a way that had never been presented before with Vietnam and stuff. So, the Hays Code just sort of dies out, but it dies slowly over 20 years. They squeeze a little bit more in. David O. Selznick calls up Breen at the Hays office and is like, look, the last line of this film is, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. And if I have to change it, it's going to change the entire tone of the film. And so they make changes to the code to accommodate certain curse words or certain language that needs to be in there, based on historical accuracy or whatever. So it's interesting how things changed over the next 20 years. Like they formulated a very strict set of rules and then slowly unwound them over the decades.
100%. Let's jump into something interesting. Okay, so the blacklist, right?
Hmm.
When this happens, do you think that all those writers would have made those amazing films that they did had that not happened?
Like
I
who, Carl?
mean,
Like Carl Foreman and Trumbo and those guys?
yeah, so them being somebody else, right? Like them having to be pretending to be ghostwriters and stuff. I feel like it allowed them to maybe say things, do things, make things that they wouldn't have typically made themselves, right? Because there were a lot of great films that came out of that era, and that's one thing I always think about. Like, would they have still like Trombone? Would he have made The Brave One, right? If he wasn't, you know, blacklisted.
It's hard to say. I think a lot of, I mean, these guys were writers, but when we think of filmmaker of screenwriters today, they're auteurs. They're writing something that they're invested in and that they've been dreaming of their entire life and they've been working on for years and years, and it's like their baby. These guys were ringers. Like I just did the intro for The Mummy on my channel, and Carl Lemley Jr. is like, we need a new horror movie and I want it based on a novel, so you guys go write it. It wasn't like, let's find someone who's really into Egyptian culture and have them write this movie. So it was a job, and it was like working a 9 to 5. It was like going to an office. So on the one hand, no, yes, we would have probably gotten a lot of these movies, but would they have been so politically motivated and impactful like High Noon? Carl Foreman wrote High Noon as an allegory for the blacklist. One man standing up when no one else would back him. I don't know if that kind of impact would be there had it not been for McCarthy and HUAC and all of them.
See, I always think about that. I just like you have somebody that can hide behind a curtain now, right? And he's angry, right? I'm talking about all these guys, and I don't know. I just feel like the words are spewing out, and the movies they're making. I don't know. I don't know that we would have got some of that stuff had the
It's
blacklist not happened.
it's tough also because when these guys were blacklisted, some the 10 went to prison for a year, to
Yeah.
various prisons, but when they got out they couldn't get work. They were still blacklisted. It wasn't like you served your time and now it's better. So they ghost wrote, and I don't think a lot of them wanted to shake the boat anymore, to say, I'm going to make my big political statement here. They made their big political statement. They testified before HUAC and said, and basically said, we're not, actually they didn't testify. That was the whole thing. They refused to testify against HUAC. And that was what they stood up and said. We're not going to sit here and answer your stupid question of, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? And that's why they went to prison. And I think they come out of that saying, I've got a family to feed. I've got kids and a wife and whoever to take care of back home. Once I get out of here, if I'm going to ghostwrite, I'm going to ghostwrite. I'm going to write my movie, and that's it. I don't think they're going to sit there and make another big political statement and risk going back to prison or being dragged in front of, the Senate again.
100%. Yeah, no, that's a crazy time in film,
Yeah.
and yeah, so yeah, I just wanted your take on that. This is something I always thought about. I was like, we got so many great movies out of that time period, and I don't know, them going to prison and getting that experience in jail, the anger they must have felt, it just
Yeah.
changes the person. And then when you're able to hide behind something, I mean, it happens now, right? Like a lot of these keyboard warriors, I don't know that if you meet them in real life, they're probably not like they are on the internet. I just feel like when people are hiding behind something, they can their voice can change. Um,
Yeah. I mean, like one of my favorite things is to watch, like, people at the Oscars, stand up and speak the truth and, use their voice to whatever. And it's like, yeah, you're getting up there, you're rich and you're actors and you're patting yourselves on the back and you get up there and on stage and nothing's going to happen to you after you get off that stage. The police aren't going to escort you to the precinct to book you for speaking your mind. And you're speaking from a point of a lot of privilege. And then you look at someone like Susan Sarandon, who goes to the front lines, who goes to protest and gets arrested and really, like, puts her nose into it. And it's like night and day. And look, Susan Sarandon is also, I would assume, very well off. She's a famous actress. You know, she's she's a name, but she's also doing the work and she's, going out there with everybody and using her voice and amplifying, but also with the people, not just from her high horse. So
100%, 100%. All right, so Harry, okay? Let's move on to the good old 1970s and those exploitation films. It was
mhm.
that was one heck of an era. Um, you think we can do that still? You think we can somebody can make those movies today and people would watch them?
I mean, isn't Tarantino doing that now?
To an extent, yeah.
I I mean, you've got exploitation films. I think a lot of people think of like black exploitation films like Shaft and Blackula and um oh, what else? Dolomite and all of those. And I think those came from a place of, post civil rights, black people, black filmmakers really making a name for themselves and showing their culture in a way that hadn't been um depicted on film before or on screen before. Um, now we're getting exploitation films from the likes of Tarantino, who's paying homage to those films. But it hits different because he's a white director. So like I know he speaks that language of film, that he has that grammar of exploitation in him because that's what he grew up watching. I think it comes from a different place though when he's doing it. There's that scene in Pulp Fiction where he's just rattling the N-word off left and right, and I'm like, no, like you don't get to just do that just because you're like you think you're part of it. Like it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've noticed that obviously we all know about the feet thing, but yeah, I feel like if you watch his movies, he likes to say that word a lot. It seems to, I don't know.
Yeah, and
Um,
there were different genres of exploitation films. So you've got like the Reefer Madness exploitation film of sort of the really intense paranoid take on drugs and like almost like the after school special kind of stuff. But taken to like the nth degree. But nowadays, when people do Reefer Madness, like I know Kristen Bell does Reefer Madness, it's in an ironic way. They do it as a musical, or they do it as a straight up reenactment of the original one, but it's done ironically, so it holds a different weight than it did back then. And then you've got stuff like car exploitation films like Death Race or Grand Theft Auto with Ron Howard or Cannonball Run, Race with the Devil, Mad Max. So there's those films. Then you see those sort of come back today with like the Fast and the Furious films. So I think that we're still making exploitation films. We just call them different things now. They're action adventure films or they're action films or they're racing films or, that kind of thing.
Yo, I'm so excited. I could talk to this man forever about movies. It's crazy. I love it. And yeah, okay. So do you okay, so your favorite decade of movies is the 30s. So would you say that 1939 is the best year for movies?
So I would say I think that the original question was like, what is the best year for or best decade for film? And I would say the 1930s. My favorite is the 19 it varies. It's usually the 1940s or the 1950s. 1940s, you get Casablanca, you get Dark Passage, you get Key Largo, like all the best bogey films are in the 1940s. But then you get the 1950s and you get Night of the Hunter and you get Sweet Smell of Success, which are some of my favorite films of all time. So, it depends on the day, really, for me.
Well, we all know out there that 1994 is the best year for movies.
Everyone says that, but you could say 1999 is the best year for film as well. Like every couple of decades, you get like the best year for film, but I still think 39 is
39 is
the
pretty
tops.
solid. Pretty solid. Um, who do you
But
think is the most influential person in film
of
ever
all time,
of all time? And why is it Lucy?
Lucille Ball. Yeah, I mean Lucille, but I mean in film, not so much. In television, absolutely.
In
I would say
television, film, in the industry in general.
she she wasn't a huge star in film. I think she had success, but she was not as influential as like a Jimmy Stewart or I'd say Hitchcock is in film is probably the most influential. Um, but for television, Lucille Ball. I mean, we have reruns because of Lucille Ball. We have the Twilight Zone and Star Trek because of Lucille Ball. We have what do you call it? Oh crap. The multi-camera sitcom because of Lucille
Multi-camera.
Ball. And actually, we have the multi-camera sitcom because of Carl Freund, the director of The Mummy, German cinematographer who created that. He went to go work on I Love Lucy after he was doing films in the 40s and stuff. In the 30s, he went to go work on I Love Lucy and he developed the three camera setup. So
I'm curious. So, most movies that are made are remakes,
it's
or have,
true.
have been done over the years. I mean, even the Adam Sandler movie, Mr. Deeds, that's a remake. So,
Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. Yeah.
what is there a current remake that is better than the original version?
Current remake better than the original.
I mean, the original. So, like when you look at Father the Bride, right? Father the Bride has been done three or four different times now, right, throughout the
Yeah.
decades. So when I say like Father the Bride, I mean the original Father the Bride compared to like, so the original film that was made. Is there, in your opinion, any remake that is superior to that original film?
I'd say Scarface. Um,
That's a good one, yeah.
is superior. I would also say, and I'm in the minority here, and it might just be my personal preference. I think the Cape Fear remake that Scorsese did was better than the Robert Mitchum one. Don't let anyone hear me say that.
Oh, I
Um,
agree with you 100%.
but I think, and I love Robert Mitchum and I love Gregory Peck, and they're both in the remake too. But there's just something about Scorsese's direction and De Niro playing Max Cady that is so terrifying. It's so good. For me, those are the two big ones.
I love that. I love that. Oh. Yeah, it's crazy when people you got to think about movies have been made now over 100 years. There's just you think about a movie, it's most likely been done.
I mean, look, Maltese Falcon was the 1941 one was a remake. It was done in 1932. The
Yep.
1932 one was actually really good and very successful, very close to the book. When the Hays Code came around, they had to recut it to make it uh to make it adhere to the Hays Code. At which point it sort of disappeared. It fell behind because it was a completely different film. They remade it again with I think Betty Davis as Satan Met a Lady, and it was a comedy. They did it as a comedy, and it sucked. Like it bombed hard. And it wasn't until Bogey did it that it really found its place and found its own, and that's the one that everyone remembers. So
Love that. Love that. Y'all, I could talk to this man all night about movies. It's so amazing. If you love everything this man has said all night, go check him out. Where can they find you, Mr. Harry?
They can find me on TikTok at Lobby Intros. They can find me on Instagram at Lobby_intros because some jerk already had Lobby Intros. I'm on YouTube, but I'm not really on YouTube. I got to sort of get more into that. But those are the two big places that you can find me.
And we can see you once a week, you said, on Memento?
Oh, that's right. At Momitu. You can find me on
Too?
Momitu at it's at Momitu dot com. Mometu.com. Free app. You can sign up. You can watch all the movies they have for free. And what's this is the best part. So when I first started, when I signed the contract with them and everything, the deal was, they would put it up on their YouTube channel, they'd put it up on their Instagram or their Facebook, and I would put my intros on my TikTok channel. So a week later, so they'd get the first stab at them, and then I'd put them up on my TikTok channel, and we'd sort of use our combined followings on each one because I have a bigger following on TikTok than they do to amplify the app and amplify the intro. Well, they also started putting the intros on the app, which I was like mind blowing to me. So when you go into the app, the films I've done, like The Hitchhiker or The Bells of St. Mary's, you'll see you can watch the trailer, you can watch the film, and then you can watch the introduction. It's sort of like being in the TCM app, when you can watch the intro there too. It's just very cool to and surreal to see click introduction and then there I am. It's very cool.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that for you, man. Man, that is so awesome. And TCM, we'll hopefully make that call one day when they see how amazing you are and knowledgeable and your love. That's what I love most about you. Your love for film. When you talk about movies, I can feel it. I can feel that love coming out of you.
There's a lot of love. I'm oozing love.
There you go. There you go. Well, Harry, thank you for joining me. And y'all, don't worry, we are going to have Harry back on the show very soon. This was a ton of fun. And yeah, y'all, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, and we'll see you all next week for more Hollywood Hangouts.
Thanks.